My name's Bridget Lyle, I'm 32, and I've always been the one holding my family together, paying bills, fixing messes, showing up when no one else does. I'm a software engineer juggling deadlines and family expectations, yet somehow I'm never the favorite. My sister. She's the golden child always stealing the spotlight with her charm, while I'm stuck in the background footing the bill. My parents eat it up pretending we're one big happy family, but I've always been the outsider looking in. At her big graduation party, I thought things might change. Then she smirked, pointed to a folding chair by the trash, and said, "Sorry, this table's for family only." I sat there humiliated until the bill came. $4,500. I had a decision to make, one I knew would shatter my family, but in that moment I also knew there was no other way. If you think that was the breaking point, wait until you see what came next. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. A month ago, my mom called me up, her voice all sugar and charm. She said my sister, the family's pride and joy, was graduating with her MBA from Tulane. They wanted to throw her a big party at a fancy French restaurant in New Orleans, the kind with crystal chandeliers and waiters in bow ties. Mom made it sound like a family effort, but I knew what was coming. "You got this right, Bridget?" she asked, not really asking. I sighed and agreed to cover the costs, renting the private dining room, hiring a jazz trio, even getting Kelly a custom engraved watch as a graduation gift. It wasn't cheap, nearly $3,000 up front, and that was before the catering bill. I spent weeks coordinating everything. I called the restaurant manager to confirm the menu: Creole shrimp beef bourguignon, the works. I booked the jazz trio, a local band with a reputation for setting the mood. I even spent hours picking out that watch, making sure it was something Kelly would flaunt. My inbox was flooded with confirmations and my bank account was taking a hit. Meanwhile, Kelly was too busy basking in her new degree to lift a finger. She sent me a text. "Looks good, sis. Make it perfect." I rolled my eyes but kept going. My parents didn't help either. Dad stayed out of it as usual, saying, "You're good at this stuff, Bridget." Mom just kept calling to add more guests. Her book club, Kelly's professors, some couple called the Lesters, who were parents of Kelly's MBA classmates. The pressure was on. My job as a software engineer was already kicking my butt: late nights, debugging code, early mornings with clients. But family comes first, right? That's what I told myself as I juggled work and party planning. I'd always been the one to step up, whether it was paying for Dad's car repairs or covering Mom's medical bills last year. Kelly, though, she'd breeze in, flash a smile, and get all the praise. I figured this party might be different. Maybe they'd see how much I was putting in. My Aunt Mom's sister warned me not to expect much. "They've always got blinders on for Kelly," she said over coffee one morning. I shrugged it off, but her words stuck with me. The week before the party, I double-checked everything. The restaurant sent me a contract: $4,500 for the catering alone, due at the end of the night. I winced, but figured I'd handle it like always. I told Mom, and she just said, "You're a lifesaver, Bridget." Kelly called once asking if I could add a champagne toast. "Make it classy," she said, like I was her personal assistant. I bit my tongue and added it to the list. My aunt called too, offering to help, but I told her I had it under control. She didn't push, just said, "Don't let them walk all over you, kid." I laughed, but deep down I was starting to feel the weight. The night before the party, I barely slept. I was up late finalizing details, checking the guest list, making sure the gift was wrapped. I kept thinking about what my aunt said about how I always end up carrying the load. I pushed it aside, telling myself this was for Kelly's big day. I wanted it to be perfect, not for her, but because I thought it might finally earn me a seat at the table, figuratively and literally. I had no idea how wrong I was. The night of Kelly's graduation party arrived, and I walked in wearing a navy dress I'd picked out to blend in, carrying the engraved watch I'd spent hours choosing. The private dining room was packed: Kelly's professor's mom's book club, the Lesters, and a dozen others I barely knew. The jazz trio I'd hired played softly, their notes floating over the clink of wine glasses. I scanned the room for my seat, expecting to be near my family. Mom caught my eye and waved me over, her smile wide but fleeting. "Over here, Bridget," she said, pointing vaguely toward the back. I made my way through the crowd, nodding at a few familiar faces. Kelly was at the head table, radiant in a white dress, laughing with her classmates. Dad sat beside her, beaming like she'd just won a Nobel Prize. I figured my seat was with them, but as I approached, Kelly's smile turned sharp. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "Sorry, this table's for family only." Her voice was loud enough for nearby guests to turn. She pointed to a folding table near the service area, tucked between a stack of trays and the kitchen door. A single chair sat there, wobbly and out of place. My stomach dropped. Mom let out a quick laugh like it was a harmless joke. "Oh, Kelly, don't be silly," she said, but she didn't move to stop her. Dad just shrugged his eyes on his wine glass. I stood there, frozen, the watchbox heavy in my hands. The Lesters seated nearby exchanged glances but said nothing. I felt every eye in the room on me, or maybe it just seemed that way. My face burned, but I forced my legs to move. I walked to the folding table, set the gift down, and sat. The chair creaked under me, and the smell of kitchen grease hit my nose. The jazz trio kept playing, oblivious. I tried to focus on the party, but it was like watching through a fog. Kelly held court, toasting with champagne I'd added to the menu at her request. Guests fawned over her, congratulating her on her MBA. Mom kept circling the room, playing the proud mother, while Dad stayed glued to Kelly's side. I caught snippets of their chatter, how Kelly was destined for greatness, how she'd land a top job. No one mentioned me, not even a thank you for pulling the night together. I sipped my water, the glass sweaty in my hand, and told myself to stay calm. Aunt Agnes arrived late, her heels clicking as she entered. She spotted me and frowned, her eyes narrowing as she took in my setup. "What's this nonsense?" she muttered loud enough for Mom to hear. Mom rushed over, whispering something I couldn't catch, but Agnes brushed her off. She pulled up a chair from another table and sat beside me, her perfume cutting through the kitchen smells. "You don't belong here, Bridget," she said quietly. I thought she meant the party, but she added, "Not at this sorry excuse for a table." I managed a weak smile, grateful for her presence. The night dragged on. Waiters bustled past my table, balancing trays of Creole shrimp and beef bourguignon. One nearly knocked over my glass, muttering an apology before hurrying off. I watched Kelly open gifts at the head table, her laughter ringing out as she showed off a necklace from Mom and Dad. When she got to my watch, she held it up, briefly said nice, and set it aside without a glance my way. My chest tightened. I'd spent weeks making this night perfect, and here I was, parked by the service door like an afterthought. I kept my head down, picking at my plate, but anger was simmering. Every laugh from the head table felt like a jab. Mom stopped by once, saying, "You okay, honey?" but her eyes were already back on Kelly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Agnes stayed with me, her silence more comforting than any words. She caught Kelly's eye once and gave her a look that could have stopped traffic, but Kelly just smirked and turned away. I gripped my fork, my knuckles white, wondering how I'd let myself end up here again. As the jazz trio wrapped up their final set, the restaurant manager approached the head table, a leather folder in his hand. The party was winding down, guests sipping their last glasses of champagne, their voices a low hum. I sat at my folding table, still nursing a glass of water, my anger from Kelly's earlier jab simmering but contained. Agnes sat beside me, her sharp eyes scanning the room. The manager cleared his throat, catching Mom's attention. He opened the folder and slid it toward her. "The bill for the evening," he said politely. $4,500 due tonight." Mom's smile faltered. She glanced at Dad, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Kelly, mid-conversation with a professor, barely looked up. The manager weighted his pen, tapping the folder. Mom leaned toward Kelly, whispering something, but Kelly just shrugged her eyes, flicking toward me. I caught her gaze, and for a split second I saw it, the assumption that I'd handle it like always. Mom turned to me, her voice carrying across the room. Bridget, honey, you've got this right. The air felt heavy, every guest's attention shifting my way. My heart pounded, but something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Not this time, Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I looked at Kelly, then at the manager, and said, "Not my table." The words hung in the room, sharp and final. Kelly's smile froze. Dad's wineglass paused halfway to his mouth. Mom's eyes widened, her hand clutching the tablecloth. The manager blinked, unsure what to do. "Ma'am," he started, looking at Mom. "The payment is due now." Mom stammered. "But, Bridget, you always—" I cut her off. "I paid for the venue, the band, the watch. $3,000 up front. This one's on you." Gasps rippled through the room. The Lesters seated nearby leaned forward, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity. Kelly laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Sis, come on, don't make a scene," she said, her voice tight. Agnes stood up beside me, her presence like a wall. "A scene," she said, her tone cutting through Kelly's fake cheer. "You're the one who parked your sister by the kitchen door, Kelly. You don't get to call this a scene." She turned to Mom and Dad. "And you two laughing along like it's nothing, shame on you. Bridget's been carrying this family for years and you treat her like a doormat." The room went silent, the jazz trio's absence making every word echo. Mr. Lester coughed, shifting in his seat while Mrs. Lester whispered something to her husband. Kelly's face turned red. "That's not fair," she snapped, standing up. "This is my night, Agnes. Bridget's just being dramatic." I shook my head, feeling a strange calm. "Dramatic?" I said. "I spent weeks making this perfect for you. I paid for half this party out of my own pocket. And you couldn't even give me a seat at your table." I turned to the manager. "They'll handle the bill. I'm done." I grabbed my purse and the watch box, leaving it unopened on the table. Mom rushed toward me, her voice low and frantic. "Bridget, please, we'll sort this out. Don't embarrass us." I met her eyes, seeing the panic but no real regret. "I'm not the one who's embarrassed," I said. Dad finally spoke, his voice gruff. "Bridget, sit down. We're family." I almost laughed. "Family," I said. "You made it clear where I stand." I nodded at Agnes, who gave me a small, proud smile. The Lesters stood up, Mr. Lester pulling out his wallet. "We'll cover part of it," he said, his voice firm. "But Kelly, this isn't right." Kelly's jaw dropped. "You don't have to," she started, but Mrs. Lester cut her off. "We expected better from you," she said, her tone icy. The other guests murmured, their eyes darting between us. Kelly's professor, who'd been praising her all night, looked away, his face unreadable. Agnes walked with me toward the exit, her hand on my shoulder. "You did good, kid," she whispered. I glanced back one last time. Kelly was arguing with the manager, her voice rising. Mom was pleading with the Lesters, her hands waving. Dad stared at his plate, silent. The laughter that had filled the room earlier was gone, replaced by a tense, awkward hush. I walked out of the restaurant with Agnes, the New Orleans night wrapping around us like a warm blanket. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, my hand steady for the first time that night. Agnes didn't say much as we headed to her car, but her quiet nod told me she approved. Back inside, I could only imagine the chaos unfolding. The Lesters' offer to cover part of the bill had thrown Kelly into a panic, and I wasn't there to clean up her mess. By the time I got home, my voicemail was full. Mom left 3 messages, her voice shifting from pleading to sharp. "Bridget, you can't just walk out like that," she said in the first one. "We need to talk about this." The second was shorter, more desperate. "Honey, please call me back. Kelly's in over her head." The third was clipped, almost angry. "This isn't how family behaves." I deleted them all without responding. My phone lit up again. Kelly this time. Her text read, "Sis, you really screwed me over. Call me." I turned my phone off. The next morning, Agnes called to fill me in. After I left, the restaurant manager had grown impatient, hovering over the head table with the unpaid bill. Kelly tried to charm her way out, flashing her usual smile, but it didn't work. The Lesters, who'd initially offered to help, backed off completely. Mr. Lester had pulled Kelly aside, his voice low but firm. "We thought you were responsible," he told her, according to Agnes. "This kind of behavior doesn't sit well with us." Mrs. Lester had nodded, her disappointment clear. They left shortly after, leaving Kelly to face the $4,500 tab alone. Kelly didn't have that kind of money. Her MBA was funded by loans, and her savings were thin from years of leaning on me for extras, dinners, trips, even her car payments. Agnes said Kelly scrambled to pull out credit cards, her hands shaking as she handed them over. One card got declined, and she had to call a friend to transfer money on the spot. The humiliation was written all over her face. Agnes told me and the other guests, professors, classmates, Mom's book club, watched in awkward silence. Dad stayed quiet, his usual tactic, while Mom tried to smooth things over, telling everyone it was a misunderstanding. No one bought it. By noon, Mom was blowing up my phone again. I let every call go to voicemail, each one sounding more frantic. "Bridget, we're family," she said in one message. "You can't just abandon us like this." I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. For years, I'd been the one bailing them out, from Dad's car repairs to Kelly's shopping sprees. This time, I wasn't budging. I texted Mom once, short and clear. "Handle it yourselves. I'm done." She didn't reply after that, probably too shocked to know what to say. Agnes stopped by my apartment that afternoon, a coffee in hand for each of us. She didn't sugarcoat things. "Kelly's in a hole now," she said, sitting on my couch. "The Lesters were supposed to introduce her to some big-shot recruiter for a corporate job. After last night, they're not so keen." I nodded, sipping my coffee, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. Agnes caught my expression and leaned forward. "Don't you dare feel bad, Bridget," she said. "You gave them everything and they pushed you aside. They're reaping what they sowed." I spent the rest of the day fielding emails from work, trying to focus on my own life. My inbox had a message from one of Kelly's classmates, someone I'd met briefly at the party. She wrote, "I heard what happened. You didn't deserve that. Kelly's been telling everyone you overreacted, but most of us saw through it." I didn't reply, but it felt good to know not everyone was on Kelly's side. Another text came in from Mom later that evening. This one softer. "Can we talk, honey? We didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Words were cheap, and I was tired of their promises. Kelly's calls kept coming over the next few days, each one more desperate. "Sis, I need to borrow some cash," she said in a voicemail. "I'll pay you back, I swear." I didn't call back. I'd heard that line before too many times. Dad sent a single text, "You're breaking your mother's heart." I didn't respond to that either. Agnes was right, they'd taken me for granted for too long, and I wasn't going back. The weight of their expectations was gone, and I wasn't about to pick it up again. A few weeks after the party, my life started to shift in ways I hadn't expected. I'd blocked Mom, Dad, and Kelly's numbers, tired of their voicemails and texts begging for reconciliation. The silence was strange at first, but it gave me room to breathe. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects as a software engineer to keep my mind busy. One evening, while scrolling through my email, I found a message from Agnes with a link to a local news site. The subject line read, "You might want to see this." I clicked the link, and there it was, a piece written by Agnes herself, published in a New Orleans community paper. She didn't name names, but anyone who'd been at the party could connect the dots. The article, titled "Family Values or Family Facade," called out the hypocrisy of those who parade their success while stepping on the ones who lift them up. Agnes described a golden child who'd humiliated her own sister at a lavish event, backed by parents who turned a blind eye. She wrote about the unsung heroes in families, the ones who pay the bills and keep the peace, only to be cast aside. The comments section was flooded. Some praised the honesty, others speculated about who it could be. I knew Kelly would see it, and I knew it would sting. It did more than sting. Agnes called me a few days later to share the fallout. Kelly had been in talks with a top consulting firm, a job the Lesters had helped her land through their connections. The firm's recruiter, a reader of the local paper, had seen Agnes's article and started asking questions. Kelly's classmates, still buzzing about the party, filled in the blanks. The recruiter decided Kelly wasn't a cultural fit, and the offer was pulled. Kelly was devastated, Agnes said, scrambling to apply for lower-tier jobs to cover her mounting debt from the party and her loans. I felt a twinge of pity, but it passed quickly. Kelly had made her choices, and I wasn't responsible for fixing them. Mom and Dad didn't take it well either. Agnes told me they'd been calling her nonstop, demanding she retract the article. "They're embarrassed," she said, her voice dry. "Not sorry, just embarrassed." Mom even showed up at Agnes's house, tearfully claiming I'd torn the family apart. Agnes shut her down, telling her the family had been broken long before I walked away. Dad sent me a letter in the mail, a rare move for him, pleading for me to come to a family dinner to work things out. I read it once, then tossed it in the trash. Their words felt hollow, more about saving face than making amends. Meanwhile, I was building something new. I'd been toying with an idea for a tech startup, a platform to help small businesses manage remote teams. The party had lit a fire under me, not anger, but clarity. I didn't need my family's approval to succeed. I pitched the idea to a former colleague who loved it and offered to co-found the company. We spent weeks drafting plans, meeting investors, and coding prototypes. By the end of the month, we'd secured our first round of funding, enough to quit my day job and go all in. I named the company Anchor, a nod to being my own foundation, not someone else's. Kelly's life kept unraveling. A mutual friend told me she'd moved back in with Mom and Dad, unable to afford her apartment after the job loss. She'd taken a part-time gig at a local cafe, a far cry from the corporate career she'd bragged about. Her social media went quiet, no more posts about her MBA or glamorous nights out. I didn't gloat, I just didn't care anymore. My focus was on Anchor, which was gaining traction faster than I'd hoped. We landed a feature in a tech blog, and suddenly I was the one getting calls from recruiters, not Kelly. Mom tried one last time to reach me, leaving a voicemail through a friend's phone to bypass my block. "Bridget, we're so proud of you," she said, her voice shaky. "Can't we just put this behind us?" I listened, then deleted it. Proud. They'd never said that when I was paying their bills or planning their parties. Agnes backed me up, saying, "They only want you back because you're shining without them." She was right. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but cutting them off showed me I didn't need it. By 3 months post-party, I'd moved to a new apartment closer to Anchor's office. My days were filled with meetings, coding, and building a team that felt more like family than my own ever had. Agnes visited often, bringing her sharp wit and endless stories. She never asked me to forgive my family, and I loved her for it. As for Kelly, Mom, and Dad, they faded into the background, a chapter I'd closed. I wasn't angry anymore, just free. 6 months after the party, I stood in the office of Anchor, my startup, watching my team hustle through a product demo for a new client. The walls were lined with whiteboards scribbled with code and timelines, and the air buzzed with energy. We'd just signed a deal with a chain of local businesses, a milestone that put us on the map in New Orleans' tech scene. I looked out the window at the city skyline, a faint smile on my face. This was my life now, built from scratch, without the weight of my family's expectations dragging me down. I hadn't spoken to Mom, Dad, or Kelly since the night I walked out of the restaurant. Their attempts to reach me had petered out after the first few months, replaced by an eerie quiet. Agnes kept me updated, though I didn't ask for much. She said Mom had stopped hosting her book club, too embarrassed by the whispers that followed Agnes's article. Dad had retreated into his usual silence, avoiding the topic altogether. Kelly, from what I heard, was still at the cafe, picking up extra shifts to chip away at her debt. I didn't check her social media or ask for details. That part of my life was over, and I'd made peace with it. Looking back, the party was a turning point, but not in the way I'd expected. When Kelly told me, Sorry, this table's for family only. It wasn't just a jab, it was a mirror. It showed me how I'd let myself be pushed aside not just that night, but for years. I'd spent so long trying to prove my worth to people who didn't see it, thinking if I gave enough, paid enough, did enough, they'd finally value me. But standing up that night saying, "Not my table," wasn't just about the bill. It was about choosing myself. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about boundaries. I realized family isn't a blank check you keep writing no matter how much it costs you. It's okay to walk away from people who take you for granted, even if they share your blood. Agnes taught me that not with words, but by standing by me when I needed it most. She was my family now, not because of obligation, but because of respect. My team at Anchor was too. They believed in me not because of what I could do for them, but because of what we could build together. There were moments I doubted myself. Late at night when the office was empty, I'd wonder if I'd been too harsh, if I should have given Mom or Kelly one more chance. But then I'd remember the folding table, the laughter, the years of being the one who always said yes. I wasn't that person anymore. Anchor wasn't just a company, it was proof I could stand on my own. Every contract we signed, every feature we launched, reminded me I didn't need their approval to thrive. I don't know if Kelly or my parents ever learned their lesson. Maybe they blamed me, maybe they moved on. It didn't matter. My life wasn't about them anymore. I'd found my own table, one where I belonged, surrounded by people who saw my worth. I wasn't angry or bitter, I was grateful. Grateful for the clarity that night gave me, for the courage to walk away, and for the chance to build something better. To everyone who's listened to my story, thank you for sticking with me to the end. It's not just about one party or one fight, it's about knowing your worth and standing up for it. If this hit home for you, hit that subscribe button and join me for more stories about finding your place, no matter who tries to push you out. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to share more with you.
My name is Beth Marquez, and I'm 29 years old. For 3 years, I believed I was building the kind of life you take pictures of to brag about. A quiet apartment with warm lights, steady routines, the kind of love people say doesn't burn out. At least that's what I thought. Back then, my boyfriend Kevin used to call me his safe place. When we first started dating, he'd gush to his friends about me, about how calm I was, how I listened without judging, how I never raised my voice. He'd tell them I had this way of making him feel grounded just by existing. And I took pride in that. I wasn't the loudest person in the room, nor the flashiest. I didn't crave attention or chase thrills. I just showed up every day and loved him the best way I knew how. I work in IT consulting. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and it's stable. I don't drive a sports car or flood Instagram with gym selfies, but I truly thought that stability mattered more than spectacle. Maybe I was wrong, or maybe Kevin just changed. It started so small you'd almost think I imagined it. Little comments tossed like pebbles. Do you ever do something spontaneous, Beth? You're so routine. He'd laugh afterward, brushing it off like a joke. But jokes always hide truth, don't they? Then came the comparisons. We were at his college friend's birthday party once. The music was loud, the kind that rattles your ribs. Some guy named Nick decided to be the center of attention by dropping to the floor and doing obnoxious push-ups in the middle of the living room. Everyone clapped, cheering him on. Kevin nudged me with his elbow and grinned. You could learn a thing or two from him. Confidence never hurt anybody. I looked at him, not sure whether to laugh it off or ask if he was serious. Before I could decide, he rolled his eyes. Don't be so sensitive, it's just a joke. But it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like the ground shifting under me just enough to make me stumble. Over the months, that version of Kevin, the one who once saw me as his safe place, started to vanish. He was always on his phone, thumb flying across the screen, laughing at messages he wouldn't explain. His social media changed too. Pictures of him at the gym, shirtless mirror shots, captions like, "Don't get comfortable." He still came home to me at night, still dropped his keys in the dish by the door like he always did. But somehow it felt like I was living with a stranger who was already halfway gone. I tried to talk to him. God knows I tried. One night while we were eating takeout in silence, I finally broke. Kevin, are we okay? You've been distant, different. I don't want to assume, but I can't ignore it either. He sighed, leaned back in his chair, and looked at me like I was exhausting. Beth, you're overanalyzing again. This is exactly what I mean. You always want to have these deep conversations. Can't we just be? His words sank like stones in my chest. I didn't argue. I didn't push. I just swallowed the ache and told myself he was tired, stressed that things would go back to how they used to be. But they didn't. The next week, he posted a picture with some woman from his gym, his arm wrapped around her waist, both of them smiling like they'd known each other forever. The caption read, "Training with the best." When I asked about it, trying to keep my voice steady, he scoffed. "Oh my God, Beth, it's just a post. You seriously need to chill. You're acting insecure, and honestly, that's not attractive." That one cut deep, because I'd never been the jealous type. I never tried to control him or invade his freedom. I trusted him, completely. But now it felt like he was twisting that trust into a weapon. I wish I could tell you I walked away right then, that I had enough self-respect to see the truth and leave. But the truth, I stayed. I stayed because I loved him, and I convinced myself the man I fell in love with was still in there somewhere, just hidden under stress or distraction. But I was wrong. The night he finally said the words that broke me, that night I realized the man I loved wasn't coming back. The distance between us kept stretching, invisible but undeniable. Kevin was always hunched over his phone, laughing at things I wasn't invited to see. His captions grew sharper, cockier. Pictures of him flexing in the gym mirror shirt, peeled halfway, tagged with lines like, "Don't get comfortable." At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just a phase, a way of proving something to himself. But the more I tried to pull us back together, the more he slipped away. I started making his favorite dinners. Little reminders of us spaghetti with homemade sauce, the recipe his mom had taught me. The playlists we once sang along to on road trips. He barely noticed. When I reached out, his responses were sharp-edged. "Beth, you're so serious all the time. Can't you just relax?" It felt like I was begging for scraps of affection from a man who had already left in every way except physically. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Wednesday, the kind of unremarkable evening that shouldn't live forever in your memory but does because of what happens. I was rinsing plates at the sink, asking casually if he wanted to watch something together. He didn't answer at first. He was glued to his phone, scrolling TikTok, lips twitching at some video. Finally, he set it down and looked at me. Not with love, not even with annoyance, with this strange, tilted curiosity, like he was dissecting me. "Do you ever wonder why I'm still here, Beth?" The sponge slipped in my hand. "What do you mean?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "You're sweet, loyal, comfortable, but that's all you are." I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, slowly buying time. "Kevin, where is this coming from?" He shrugged, as if what he was about to say required no weight at all. "You're just a placeholder until I figure out what I really want." At first, I thought I misheard. My chest went hollow like air had been sucked out of the room. What?" He actually chuckled, laughed like he'd just cracked a clever joke. "Relax. I'm just being honest. You'll still be here when I come back to my senses." In that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized he wasn't expecting heartbreak. He was expecting a scene, shouting, tears, maybe even me, clinging to him in desperation. He wanted to feel powerful, superior. Instead, I gave him nothing. I dried the counter with calm, deliberate motions. My silence unnerved him more than any outburst could have. "Thanks for the honesty," I finally said. His smile faltered, like he couldn't tell if I was serious or playing a game of my own. But I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. That night, I lay beside him in the same bed, his breathing steady as he fell asleep while my eyes stared into the dark ceiling. I felt like I was lying next to a stranger who had just confessed he was only renting space in my life, waiting for something better to come along. I didn't sleep a single minute. By morning, I was gone. I moved with quiet precision, like someone escaping a burning house without waking the fire. Just one suitcase, my laptop passport, a couple of outfits, my toothbrush, nothing more. My name was on the lease. Most of the furniture was mine, the TV, the mattress, even the dishes we used every night. But I left it all. I didn't want him thinking this was about revenge or punishment. This wasn't war. This was escape. On the kitchen counter, I left one note, just one line written in the calmest handwriting I could manage. "Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to figure it out now." Then I walked out, locked the door, and never looked back. For the first few nights, I crashed on my friend Maya's couch. She didn't ask for details, just shoved a blanket in my hands and said, "You'll tell me when you're ready." That quiet acceptance meant more than words. Still, when the apartment lights went out and the city noises dulled, silence pressed down like a weight. My eyes wandered to the glow of my phone fingers itching to unlock it, to check, to see if he noticed I was gone. I told myself I wouldn't look. I told myself I was stronger than that. But on the second night, I caved. And there it was. Kevin had already posted a story, a boomerang of him raising an iced coffee. The caption, "New day, new mindset." He hadn't texted, hadn't called, not even a question about where I was. I stared at that story until my vision blurred, the sting of betrayal mixing with something even worse, irrelevance. I locked my phone and whispered to the dark, "That's it. That's the last time." The next morning, I blocked him everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, his number. Deleted every photo, every thread. My hand shook as I pressed delete all, but when the screen cleared, a strange calm washed over me. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the start. The days after blurred into a montage of small recoveries. I started running again, shoes pounding against the pavement until my lungs burned. I dug my guitar out of the closet, strumming chords with fingers stiff from neglect. I even returned to a side project I'd shelved for years, coding a simple app idea I once had before Kevin consumed every corner of my attention. And through it all, Maya's apartment became my cocoon. Her laughter, the faint smell of coffee in the mornings, the way she never pushed me to get over it. She just let me be broken until I wasn't anymore. But healing isn't linear. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying his words on loop. "You're just a placeholder." The cruelty of it gnawed at me. Did he ever actually love me? Or was I just convenient until something shinier came along? Sometimes I'd clutch my phone, tempted to unblock him, to demand answers he didn't deserve. But then I'd hear Maya's soft breathing from the next room or the hum of the fridge, ordinary sounds grounding me. And I'd remind myself silence is an answer. Because the man who loved me once wouldn't have called me disposable. Weeks passed. The ache dulled. My body grew lighter, like I was shedding pieces of him with every step I ran, every song I played. Then, one morning over coffee, Maya tilted her head at me and said, "You look different. Less haunted." I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the steam curling from my mug and realized she was right. I was different. I was healing. And for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe this was the end of the story, my escape, my recovery, my rebirth. But endings aren't that simple. I would soon learn that my silence didn't just free me. It lit the fuse on Kevin's unraveling. It didn't take long for whispers to find their way back to me. That's the problem with shared circles, even when you cut someone out. Their shadow lingers in the spaces between friends. One evening, Maya handed me her phone with raised brows. Look familiar. On the screen was Kevin's Instagram. He hadn't wasted a second. There he was, arm draped around Vanessa. The same, just a gym friend he swore meant nothing. Photo after photo, Vanessa perched on his lap at a bar, their lips grazing, neon lights blurring behind them. Captions like, "Real recognizes real" and "Upgrade season." I scrolled through them without a flicker of emotion. My chest didn't tighten. My throat didn't close. All I felt was clarity. Because suddenly his placeholder confession made perfect sense. He'd been rehearsing his escape, convincing himself I wasn't enough so he wouldn't feel guilty when he leapt into someone else's arms. At first, Kevin flaunted Vanessa like a trophy. Friends said he wouldn't shut up about her, how wild she was, how she pushed him to live a little. They partied constantly, fueled by late nights and cheap thrills. But there's a difference between fire and fireworks. Fire sustains. Fireworks burn bright, then vanish in smoke. By the second month, the cracks were showing. Vanessa ghosted him for days, then reappeared with excuses. She called him clingy boring, said he lacked edge. One night I got a call from a mutual friend, Jared. We hadn't spoken in ages, so I almost ignored it. "Beth," he said quietly, "I don't know if you care, but you dodged a bullet." I hesitated. "What do you mean?" He sighed. Vanessa dumped him, blocked his number, unfollowed him everywhere. Word is, she told people he was dead weight, even threatened to call the cops when he showed up at her place. I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. Not with satisfaction, not with pity, just finality. "Thanks, Jared," I said simply. When I hung up, I sat in silence. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge behind me and the city traffic outside. And I realized something profound. For the first time in years, Kevin's chaos wasn't mine to manage. His downfall wasn't a burden I had to carry. He was unraveling, and I wasn't even in the room. That night, I played my guitar until my fingers ached, strumming the same chords over and over. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, but because the repetition reminded me I was building something steady again, something real. And deep down, I knew Kevin's story was far from over. Because men like him don't let go easily. Not when they finally realized the person they called a placeholder was the only one who ever truly stayed. It started quietly like a whisper carried through mutuals. Maya showed me her phone one afternoon, a screenshot from Kevin's cousin, who had suddenly liked 10 of my old photos in a row. Most of them were harmless coffee cups, a random skyline, even a picture of my dog. But the last one she hearted was a candid shot of me smiling on a balcony captioned, "Peace looks good on you." Message received. Then came the first direct attempt. A text from Kevin late at night. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve how I treated you." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Not because I was tempted, but because it felt surreal. The same man who once called me a placeholder now wanted to dress his cruelty up as regret. I didn't respond. Days later, another message. I was confused. I thought I needed something exciting, but all I got was chaos. "You were the best thing in my life, and I was too stupid to see it." Still, I said nothing. Then he escalated. A voice message popped into my inbox a full minute long. I never pressed play. I didn't need to hear his voice trembling with a script he rehearsed in the mirror. But ignoring him didn't stop him. It only fueled him. More texts followed. "Please just hear me out. I miss the way you looked at me. I messed up Beth. No one else measures up." And yet every word felt less like love and more like desperation. Not for me, but for the comfort I once gave him. One night my phone buzzed while Maya and I were watching a movie. I glanced down and saw another message from him. "I haven't felt whole since you left. You're the only one who ever made me feel like enough." I locked the screen without a word. Maya glanced at me, then back to the TV. She didn't pry. She just reached for the popcorn and nudged the bowl toward me. That simple act, her silent support, anchored me more than any apology ever could. But the truth is, silence is heavy. There were moments late at night when I replayed his words in my head. Not because I missed him, but because I questioned myself. Was I too cold, too unforgiving? Did I walk away too fast? Then I'd remember his smirk as he called me a placeholder, the way he laughed at my pain, and the doubt would fade. Because apologies mean nothing when they're only born from loss, not change. Still, I had no idea how far Kevin would go to claw his way back into my life. The texts were just the beginning. The real confrontation was waiting for me in a parking lot under harsh fluorescent lights where desperation and truth would finally collide. It was a Thursday night. I had stayed late at work, the kind of night where the office lights flickered off one by one until I was the last to leave. The air outside was cool, the kind that nipped at your skin, making the city feel quieter than it really was. I walked toward my car purse strap, digging into my shoulder when I saw him. Kevin, leaning against the hood of my car like he owned it. Arms folded, eyes fixed on me. He looked rehearsed, hairstyled, jacket, zipped just right, but underneath the polish, there was something frayed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. My stomach nodded, but my steps didn't falter. "How did you know I worked here?" I asked, voice flat. He straightened, a half grin tugging at his lips. "You forget I helped you set up your LinkedIn." I didn't smile. "What do you want, Kevin?" He raised his hands like he was surrendering. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I hesitated, keys clenched in my hand like a weapon. Against my better judgment, I stopped a few feet away. He launched into it like he'd practiced the speech 100 times. "I messed up Beth. I thought I was trading up chasing something thrilling. But it was nothing. Vanessa was nothing. She left the second things got real. And you were everything. I just didn't see it." His voice cracked at the end like he wanted me to believe he was breaking too. I let the silence stretch. The only sound was the hum of the streetlight above us. "You called me a placeholder," I finally said. He flinched. His gaze darted away before snapping back glassy with regret. "I didn't mean it. I was cruel. I thought if I convinced myself you weren't enough, I wouldn't feel guilty about what I was doing. But I was wrong. You were more than enough. You always were." My heart should have raced, should have ached. But all I felt was clarity, sharp cold, undeniable. I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You were right, Kevin." His eyes widened. "What?" "I was a placeholder," I said softly. "But not for what you think. I was holding space for the version of you that never showed up, the man who never grew into who he promised to be." He blinked, stunned, his mouth open, searching for words, but none came. I walked around him, unlocked my car, and slid inside. Through the windshield, I saw him still frozen in place, arms limp at his sides, like the script he memorized had just burst into flames in his hands. I turned the ignition headlights spilling over him for a brief, blinding second. Then I drove away. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming. No tossing, no restless replay of his words, no phantom ache in my chest. Just silence. Deep, peaceful silence. And I realized I wasn't healing anymore. I was free. I thought the parking lot would be the end. That he'd take my words, lick his wounds, and finally leave me in peace. But I underestimated desperation. The next morning, I woke to 5 missed calls from an unknown number. 3 voicemails, too. Against my better judgment, I listened. The first was shaky, his voice frayed with tears. "Beth, I know I messed up. I don't even recognize myself anymore. I just miss you. I miss how you made me feel like enough." 2 hours later came the second. Angry, bitter. "So this is who you are now, cold, emotionless. Above it all. I hope being heartless keeps you warm at night." The third swung back to pleading. "Please, I'm not asking to get back together. I just need closure. Real closure. Closure. Funny word, isn't it? Usually it means they want another chance to reopen the wound." I deleted the voicemails without replying. But the messages didn't stop. Texts rolled in, swinging like a pendulum between love and venom. "You were the best thing in my life. No one will ever love you like I did. I hate you for doing this to me. Please just talk to me." It was chaos, the same chaos he once chose over me. When silence didn't work, he turned to others. His mother messaged me on Facebook, her tone gentle but insistent. "I know Kevin made mistakes, but we all do. Don't you think he deserves a second chance?" I stared at the words until my eyes blurred, then closed the app without replying. Because what she didn't understand, what Kevin would never understand, is that I wasn't punishing him. I was protecting myself. The final straw came one evening as I returned from the gym, sweat dampening my shirt earbuds still in. There he was, standing by the entrance to my apartment building, holding a brown paper bag like it was an olive branch. When he saw me, his face lit up with forced hope. "Hey," he said softly, "I brought dinner. From that Thai place you love. Chicken pad see-ew. Extra spicy. Just like you like it." I stopped 5 feet short of him, my pulse steady. "Why are you here, Kevin?" He forced a smile, eyes glassy. "Because I miss talking to you. Because I can't sleep without thinking about what I did. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." He held the bag out like it was proof of his sincerity. I looked at him. Really looked at him, the trembling hands, the desperate smile, the hollow eyes. And I realized he didn't miss me. He missed the mirror I held up, the reflection of a man he liked better when I loved him. My voice was calm, deliberate. "I was never your placeholder, Kevin. You were just unready." His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I stepped past him, buzzed into the building, and let the door close behind me. From the lobby window, I saw him standing there, clutching the paper bag, shoulders sagging until he looked small. But I didn't feel pity. I felt freedom. That night, I posted one photo on Instagram, the city skyline at dusk, captioned simply peace. No tags, no explanation, just peace. A month later, I moved. New city, new job, new walls that had never heard his voice, new streets that didn't carry the weight of our arguments. For the first time in years, my life felt entirely mine. I didn't post much on social media, but when I did, it was intentional. A quiet coffee shop corner with my laptop open, a snapshot of me hiking hair, windswept, smiling into the sun. Photos of laughter with friends who valued me, not what I could provide for them. Each picture carried no hidden message, no veiled attempt to prove anything to anyone. They weren't for him. They were for me. Of course, his name still floated back to me in fragments. Tagged photos from mutuals showed Kevin back in his hometown, living with his parents again. His captions read like hollow mantras: "Protect your energy. Some people never deserved your time." Funny, considering he once told me I was a placeholder. Now he was the one drifting jobless, aimless, wrapped in the same chaos he once traded me for. But here's the thing: I didn't laugh. I didn't smirk. I didn't even care. Because his story was no longer mine. One night, as I watched the city lights blink outside my window, I thought about the last text he ever sent me before I blocked him for good. "One day you're going to look back and realize I was the only one who ever really loved you." I remember reading it then, closing my eyes, because I already knew the truth. One day, yes, there will come a moment when Kevin looks back and realizes he had someone who loved him the way he always claimed he wanted, and he spit on it. But when that day comes, it won't matter, because by then I won't even be a memory worth revisiting. My name is Beth Marquez. I was never a placeholder. I was the real thing, and now finally I am free.